called Stalintown and was designed as the perfect model of the communist ideal. I found out that the city had been designed by students of the great socialist architect Le Corbusier, whose statement that a house should be a machine for living seems to have been extended to every aspect of this strangely beautiful town. At the heart of Dunavaros is a steelworks, which in its heyday employed every available man and woman in one way or another. Spreading out in all directions from the steelworks are wide boulevards, bordered by apartment buildings, shops, swimming pools and schools. The perfect environment for rearing the perfect family. But since Hungary gained independence a decade ago, life in Dunavaros, as with all Hungary, has become harder. Unemployment is high and the future is uncertain. I arranged to meet some friends of a cousin of mine high up in one of the many apartment blocks.
You can see the color, yes.
Georg and Irene Der have lived here since they were children. Georg was in the middle of cooking a goulash when I arrived. He had taken a day off from his job in the steelworks.
It's homemade.
Okay, homegrown.
Made by the family, yes.
Right.
Grown by the family and ground by the family.
Maria Luczó, an old school friend of Irene's, joined us to translate.
And you can feel the difference between, you know.
Fresh.
When I came to Hungary, I wanted to meet a typical Hungarian family.
Tehát a mi korombeliek, ha ne talántán nekem
It is
azt
said
mondanám,
they are an average family in the sense that they have the necessary basic things for life. They are not extremely poor, they are not extremely rich, and they possibly will never be.
nem is akarnak följebb jutni.
Yeah.
3 évesen, úgyhogy én gyakorlatilag itt nőttem föl, úgyhogy...
George is a real local people because he arrived here in 1953. There were just cornfields where we have houses, buildings and the whole town now. The town depends on the ironworks in many things. The town just cannot exist without their financial support.
How is the situation with the steelworks now? Is the future secure?
Szerintem nem lett nehezebb, egy kicsit bizonytalanná tette az embereket inkább.
Yeah. George says life hasn't become more difficult but more uncertain. After the political changes, people were told for the very first time in our history it was not compulsory to have a job for everyone. So it has made our life much more difficult. What else?
It was a funny thing spending that afternoon with Georg, Irene and Maria. All three spent a lifetime working in the steelworks. But Irene and Maria had been laid off in recent years, part of the inevitable restructuring. Maria has set up a thriving language school in town, while Irene now works in a Japanese components factory. Aikawa came here 5 years ago to take advantage of the skilled workforce laid off by the steelworks. It must sometimes get very boring, does it, doing the same little thing again and again? Is the money good here?
Yes, she's satisfied with her salary.
I tried to ask Irene about conditions in the factory, but with her boss hovering close, she couldn't answer honestly. Only after we left did Irene tell me that she's only paid the minimum wage, about 200 euros a month, and that Aikawa is about to pull out of Hungary, possibly to one of the other accession states where salaries are even lower. But there is some good news on the horizon. A group of Hungarian entrepreneurs is going to take over the factory, and Irene's job may be secure. The following day, Maria had a surprise for me. I had told her I was interested in seeing some of the local culture, and on her instruction I went to meet some of her friends. one of whom owns this old folks' home, to witness one of Hungary's most important cultural traditions.
I don't want to see.
Az idősek otthonában egy nyugdíjas vágál.
Why is it important, this tradition?
It's rather a kind of social event, an occasion to gather together with the friends, with the family, and to celebrate that sometimes it is at the end of winter when they are waiting for springtime. Everybody wants to be happy. Originally, it used to be a very economic activity for peasants living in Hungary. They could use every little pieces of the meat. They used the inner part, the liver, kidney, the lungs, everything. Even the ears and the tail of the animal, every little piece of it.
Has new European rules affected it at all or changed the way it's done?
Én onnan tudok erről, hogy nekünk van egy partnervárosunk Németország.
István is the mayor of the nearby village, and he was told that in Germany they are not allowed to do it anymore. They should go to the slaughterhouse. The new regulations don't let do it anymore.
Then does Peter think that other elements of Hungarian life might be threatened by Europe?
Én azt gondolom, hogy nem veszélyeztet. Sőt.
He doesn't think it's a real threatening. On the contrary, he thinks that the previous regime was the one that killed many of our traditions. And as far as we can realize it, the more advanced a nation is, or the economic situation of the country is, the better chances they have to take care of their traditions.
Még fordítsd oda. Oké.
Three more now. So, Slovenia. It was almost time for me to move on to Slovenia, but first I had promised to drop in on Georg and Irene in their small country cottage, of the kind owned by many in Eastern Europe. I brought a surprise with me. Their daughter Chilla works in Brussels with the European Commission. She had flown back to join us as translator.
I just grabbed my bag.
It was winter, and Georg and Irene were a little embarrassed to be showing me the place in such a barren state. But even so, it was beautiful. Like many other city dwellers, the Dare family spend holidays and weekends out here, and they grow organic fruit, herbs and vegetables, while Georg makes his own wine from homegrown grapes. Having toured the garden, I asked Chilla how she, as both an accession state citizen and a European Commission employee, felt about the enlargement.
Sorry, must be the taxi company. Viszont hallásra. The taxi company. So I thought that these 10 countries were so much behind in development, both socially and economically, that it could end up in chaos. Since I worked there and got deeper and deeper into how the whole thing works now, I'm much more optimistic. I think it will work out. Oh, Dad is asking that yesterday Mom was telling you that she can show the house she was born in.
Oh yeah.
If you want to walk down, it's just a few houses down the street. Azt nem meséled el nekik, azt a whole story. So this is the house where my mom was born. This house has altogether one room and one kitchen, and that's all. And this is where she was born in 1950, January the 1st. And she was born so much at midnight that her mom could choose whether she was born in 49 December 31st or 50 January 1st.
Hát ott teljesen az utca végén ott fordultak. Mi gyerekek voltunk, és kijátszottunk itt az utcán, és ahogy jött a tank, hát felénk fordította az ágyú csövét, és annyira féltünk, szuhantunk be, és a pincébe ott húztuk meg magunkat.
That in 1956 there was a revolution in Hungary, and they still lived here, and Mom was playing outside on this road with his brother and sister, and suddenly a tank came down this road, and it started aiming its, whatever it's called, barrel or what, at them, so they got really, really scared and ran in, and the whole family went downstairs to the basement to hide.
And I heard that there was a sense among some Hungarians that they felt abandoned by Europe at that time.
Nem
Yes.
úgy érezte, hanem így történt.
It wasn't a sensation of people, this is what happened, that we were abandoned by Europe.
And so is your dad happy about Hungary joining the European Union?
És te örülsz az EU csatlakozásnak?
Örülök, nem repesek az örömtől, de nincs más út.
Three different answers. I'm happy. I'm not flying of happiness. What else can you do?